When an atheist is trying to convince a Christian of the cruelty and torture in the Bible, the atheist is typically doing so in an effort to explain to that Christian that the religion is primitive and archaic, just like the mortal men who penned it into existence. The Christian, however, usually thinks that the atheist's point is that he or she interprets Christianity as true but wrong, so the religion is acknowledged and refused. This isn't the case. Part of my point when I bring up the many evils that God does or allows to happen in the Bible is that even if it was true, I wouldn't waste my devotion on worshiping such a monster. However, the larger point is that the religion isn't logically true, as an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and especially an all-loving creator just wouldn't do the things that the God of the Bible does. The larger point that I'm trying to make is not that God is real, but he's mean, so I don't like him. It's that the petty, jealous, spoiled, childlike God of the Bible doesn't behave in tune with how a logical celestial being would behave, and therefore I don't believe that the Bible is accurately giving an account of such a being at all. The typical argument against the evil acts of God found in the Old Testament is that those acts are taken out of context. Even when entire chapters are cited out of context is still the Christian cry for help against the arguments that point to their God doing things or allowing things or commanding things that can only be considered evil by modern standards. Of course, there's never a complaint about context when people cite pleasant verses from the Old Testament. It's okay to hold modern people to the commands of those verses, but not the ones that we know better about. Every church service I've ever been to involves a preacher reading a select few verses from the Holy Book and talking about them, trying to explain how they apply to the daily lives of the audience. Never once have I heard religious zealots complain that a few small verses are being taken out of a very large book, when in fact that's what's happening at every single church service. Religious people are fine with having nice parts pulled out and plastered under knickknacks and wall plaques, but when we ask them to explain the other parts they aren't so proud about, we are accused of removing verses from their context. Even if read in their entirety, they are considered to be taken out of context from the time when they were written, when such acts as slavery, for example, were more socially acceptable. That argument again plays into the hands of the non-believer. Our point is not that the people at the time of the writing were not behaving by what we consider morally sound today. Our point is that those people didn't know any better, as civilization was long from reaching the progress it has today. However, an omniscient God who knows all that is, was, and ever will be is never allowed to have the excuse of committing acts of evil just because the people he allegedly created didn't know any better at the time. God would know better than to commit genocide, infanticide, and slavery. God's alleged perfection strips him away from excuses of not getting things right the first time. He's supposed to be perfect. Therefore, his Old Testament behavior should be no different than his New Testament behavior. It makes sense that a person may start off as jealous and cruel and then learn from mistakes and become more benevolent, but it makes no sense for a perfect, omniscient being to have made mistakes to learn from in the first place. Am I wrong?